James and Ben back here for OddsChecker. We got a really big card coming up here Saturday from Australia, UFC 284. One of the best pay-per-views this year. We're going to get all into it. Let me just get the screen up here, and you can see on OddsChecker, we got a bunch of odds. We're going to start first actually in the light heavyweight division. We've got Jimmy Crute taking on Alonzo Menifield. And right now on OddsChecker, you'll see Jimmy Crute, the favorite, pretty much on every book. The comeback on Alonzo Menifield, anywhere from plus 160 to plus 155. Ben, which way are you going on this one?
Yeah, this is a tough fight for Crute again because he is coming off that loss against actually now champion Jamal Hill, which I mean, that was a tough matchup for him. But I feel like he kind of has another one here because Menifield, obviously, he's not Jamal Hill, and I know he's a little bit lower on the. He's not the interim champ right now, so obviously not the same as Jamal Hill. But matchup wise, it feels kind of similar. And I don't necessarily like that for Crute here because I feel like if he can't land the early takedown, like what's this fight gonna look like? He was obviously knocked out by Jamal Hill. Menifield, really powerful puncher, kind of in the same rights. And he has 10 of his 13 wins by knockout. He's coming off back-to-back knockouts. So, I mean, this is a fight that I feel like stylistically is another tough matchup for him. So I don't really like the fact that he's such a big favorite. Maybe if it was closer to a pick 'em, I'd back him just because if he can land those early takedowns and he can control that fight, of course, he could grind this out to a decision win, maybe even get like a ground and pound stoppage. But I like Menifield with his power in this spot, catching such good odds. So I'm going to back the underdog here.
I see this a little bit differently. I think this is a fight that is prime for Jimmy Crute to win. You mentioned the loss to Jamal Hill. Obviously, he's the champ now, so that loss is not aged too badly. And then you even look at the loss before that against Anthony Smith. He got injured in that fight. So really, I mean, there was no like indication of, is he good? Is he bad? He just had some bad luck. Again, you're fighting Jamal Hill, is one of the best in the world. You're fighting Anthony Smith, who you suffer an injury in that fight. I think it's a classic case of, a guy who's on a losing streak that's losing to really good fighters and a guy who's on a winning streak who's beating not so good fighters. The guy that Alonzo Menifield just beat in his last fight, Misha Cirkunov, is no longer with the UFC. The fighter he fought before that, Mirzakhanov, also not with the UFC. You also mentioned the fact that Alonzo Menifield, 35 years old, he's getting up there in age. I think what you see is what you get with Alonzo Menifield here. I like Crute. I'm with you, though. The line maybe is a little bit high, but I might look at that inside the distance prop. Crute typically does not go the distance. I looked at the fight doesn't go the distance prop in this fight. It's like minus 600, so maybe don't use that. But I think Crute inside the distance is worth a shot. I think, again, the UFC's having this in Australia. They're obviously very high on Crute. He's on the pay-per-view. I think this is a fight they're looking to showcase his skill, and I think he can do it against Alonzo Menifield. So I'm going to go Jimmy Crute, second-round knockout to get the win over Alonzo Menifield and get it done as the betting favorite. So that's where I'm going to go with first. Okay, let's move along to the heavyweight division. We've got Justin Tafa taking on Parker Porter. And right now, Justin Tafa, a slight favorite at minus 125. The comeback on Porter, about plus 105 around there. Ben, which way are you going here?
I do like Parker Porter in this one. If you look at Tafa's wins, not the greatest resume. You look at his 2 wins in the UFC. Juan Adams, not in the UFC anymore. His most recent win, Harry Hunsucker, was cut after his loss. So 2 fighters of his wins, not in the UFC anymore. The guys that, his Jared Vanderaa loss, actually, I should say, by decision. I don't like what I've seen from Tafa. And I know he's probably the favorite because this is his hometown. He's fighting in Australia. He'll be hyped up. That's the only thing I can guess as to why, because Parker Porter, as far as I'm concerned, I wasn't super high on him when he joined the UFC, but then he rattled off 3 wins there, and he actually looked decent in them. I'm not saying he's like a high level heavyweight or anything, but he did take those fights to the decision. He showed he can go the distance. He showed that he puts out high volume. He's averaging 6.5 strikes per minute. So yeah, he lost his last fight against Jailton Almeida, but he was like a plus 400 underdog in that fight. Not a great matchup for him, but I like him to bounce back in this spot. I like the volume he puts out. I know that if this fight goes late, that Porter's probably going to be the fresher fighter. I just haven't liked what I've seen from Tafa, so I'm going to take Porter here.
Yeah, we're on the same page here. I like Parker Porter here as well. I think the reason he is the underdog is because of the age. He's 37, 29 for Justin Tafa. But yeah, Justin Tafa, I don't like I agree. Like, other than him being younger and the fact that this is in Australia, I don't really see why. I mean, the odds are close, so I guess we can't complain too much. But you look at who Parker Porter's losing to. Jailton Almeida, you just mentioned it there. People think this guy is going to be a future champion. So no shame in losing to him. Chris Daukaus, a ranked heavyweight, loss there. Not a bad loss there either. to me, this is 50-50. And if you got a guy who I think has fought better opposition, has more experience than Parker Porter actually fought John Jones on the regional scene years ago. I don't know if people know that. You got to look at it. It was one of Jones's early fights, but yeah, I like Porter here to get it done. Again, maybe you look at the fights, doesn't go the distance. I think the prop on that is actually quite decent, but I'll take Parker Porter at plus money. Absolutely. Again, I think a lot of people overlooking him here because of the age, but this is a guy that knows how to get it done every now and then. And I think he gets it done here on Saturday. So we're on the same page here, Ben. Okay, let's get to the next fight in the division. We've got Randy Brown and Jack Della Maddalena. I think the odds are off on this. I'll give my take in a second, but I want to hear your opinion on this. Jack Della Maddalena, about minus 325 favorite. Randy Brown, close to plus 300. Who you liking here?
I agree. The odds are off. I don't know if it's in the same way that you're thinking, but I think this one should be closer to pick 'em. I like Randy Brown in this fight. I read in an article earlier this week that he was training with Sean Brady, maybe working his wrestling into this fight because obviously Della Maddalena, excellent striker. He has stopped every opponent in the UFC so far, 3 straight wins. And so he looked good on the Contender Series as well. I know he took that fight to a decision. He still ended up getting the contract anyway, which you don't see all the time. It worked out for Dana taking the shot because 3 stoppage wins. He looked good. He's a hard fighter to necessarily fade at this point, but I don't like the odds, minus 330 here. I know he's in Australia and that kind of stuff, but Randy Brown, he's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage in this fight. He's already a rangy striker, so he's going to stay, at bay in this fight, kind of stay away from those power shots from Della Maddalena. And I do like him to land some takedowns in this fight. I think if Della Maddalena kind of surges in on him, looks to close the distance, I like Brown to kind of close that and get him to the ground. I think he kind of has some underrated wrestling here that he's going to display. And he does have 5 submission wins. Maybe, I'm not necessarily saying a submission, but I'm sure the prop is ludicrous right now. So maybe worth a little bit of a look, a stab there. Not super confident on Brown, but I do think the odds suggest a play here on the underdog.
Yeah, I think it's dogger pass as well. We're actually on the same page on this one too. To me, it's like I have not seen enough from Jack Della Maddalena to make him such a big favorite in this fight. And maybe it's people fading Randy Brown, but if you look at the opposition he's fought, okay, he fights Pete Rodriguez in his UFC debut. Pete Rodriguez has 4 fights. It's kind of a gimme fight for him, right? And then he fights Amiv. And even though he got the first round finish, if you remember in that fight, Amiv actually had some success early on. And then he fights Danny Roberts, who's struggling to keep his roster spot in the UFC as well. So as good as he's looked, like he's all first round finishes, I just think that him being this much of a favorite, like I see this being more even, like you said. And you look at Randy Brown, he's going to be bigger. He's fought better opposition. To me, it's dogger pass. Like I really feel that way if you're going to bet this fight. Like these are all solid wins. Chaos Williams, Trinaldo. I know you could argue that these, Trinaldo and Oliveira not in the UFC, but he's fought Vicente Luque. Warley Alves he has a wins over. Brian Barberani has a win over. Mickey Gall, the same sort of situation. He fought Mickey Gall when Gall was really hyped up and the UFC really liked him, and he went and spoiled the party there. So with all that said, I am going to be picking Jack Della Maddalena only because of the fact that Randy does tend to get finished every now and then, and it might get a little bit wild. Plus, Jack's got the home turf advantage, so to speak. But as far as a bet goes, I think betting Randy Brown in this fight is absolutely a smart play because I do think this is more of a pick'em fight. Like if I had to cap this fight, I go Jack Della Maddalena, maybe minus 150, nothing higher than that. Minus 325 is crazy for a guy that just has not fought great opposition, in my opinion. So,
one note I'm going to add to that is that I did just look up the line on Brown by submission. I'm going to say that's worth the stab. It's plus 1,200. So, I mean, if this fight, okay, not only have we not seen Della Maddalena out of the first round so far in his 3 fights, he's finished them all in the first round. That's not a bad thing, but I'm saying we haven't seen him outside the first round. Also, he's going to be, like you said, in front of his home crowd, maybe a little bit of an adrenaline dump spot if it gets out of the first round. He's used to these first round finishes. Maybe he puts it all out in the line in the first round, trying to get that stoppage for the crowd. What happens if we get to the late third or something? Brown lands a takedown. Who knows what's going to happen on the ground there? We haven't really seen his ground game yet. So I do think that's a sneaky little prop there for Brown to maybe get a submission here.
Yeah, really good fight in the welterweight division. Okay, co-main event for the interim featherweight title. We've got Yair Rodriguez taking on Josh Emmett. This will be a 5-round fight. Of course, the title is Alex Volkanovski is still the champion. It's just an interim fight because Volkanovski is fighting in the main event for the lightweight title. And right now on OddsChecker, you'll see Yair Rodriguez a bit of a favorite. Line's actually gone up a bit. I know it was a bit closer earlier, but see Yair Rodriguez about minus 165 on some books. The comeback on Emmett plus 140. Who are you liking here?
I am going to pick Rodriguez. I actually think this should be a little bit closer to pick 'em, so I might look for a prop, maybe by decision, because I mean Emmett, he's a hard guy to gather. He's an iron chin. And Rodriguez, I really wish in that last fight, for none of you that watched this last fight against Brian Ortega, I wish we would have gotten to see that full fight.
Mhm.
Ortega, his shoulder popped out, or I forget what the official injury was, but his shoulder popped out. They couldn't continue. So it did go down as a TKO win, but uh, wasn't really a TKO win. So I wish we could have seen more of that fight, because Rodriguez, since he's come back, he had that 2-year injury layoff, but I've really loved kind of to see his kicking game progress, because he was always a good kicker. But I mean, his kicks have looked like stellar since he's returned.
Mhm.
And he even landed, I remember in that first round against Ortega, he landed a really clean up kick, or front kick, I should say, and it landed on his chin. Ortega didn't go down. Ortega also has a good chin, but I mean, he's just landing some really creative kicks. He's really just upped his kicking game. So I think he'll land some really good kicks in this fight and land some good damage off him. I don't know if he can get Emmett out of there, just because I know Emmett. I mean, he's got that iron chin. Like I said, he's a hard guy to finish. I do think it goes to a decision. But Rodriguez, I just like him to kind of be the more creative striker in this fight, land a little bit more. He's a slightly higher volume striker than Emmett, but this is a pretty close fight. So I do wish it was a little bit closer to pick him, but I'm going to take Rodriguez.
Yeah, be careful about this fight. This has all the makings of an upset, in my opinion. Emmett has the edge in wrestling. Emmett's got better power, in my opinion. But Rodriguez, obviously 7 years younger. I agree with you. The volume's a little bit there, and he's more of a creative striker. I mean, remember that knockout he had over the Korean Zombie a couple of years ago, which is literally at the last second. This is a guy that can at any moment, do something crazy in the fight. I just worry that, can he stop the takedowns from Emmett? Can he take an Emmett punch? Emmett is probably the hardest hitter in that weight class. I don't think people give him enough credit for that. The problem, though, is Emmett, with the amount of injuries he's had, with the fact that he's 37, with the fact that he also, like Rodriguez, has not fought a ton, that's a little bit concerning here. So that is why I'm giving Rodriguez the edge. I don't mind the fight goes the distance prop. That might be something I look at depending on the line, but I'm also worried that, again, Rodriguez pulls something out of here, or maybe Emmett gets a knockout. Yeah. It's just a little bit worrisome. So this might be one I just sit back and watch, but I got to take Rodriguez just because he's younger, a little bit more dynamic with the striking, and I just don't know. If Emmett was younger, I might favor him a little bit more. The 7-year gap is a bit concerning. That's kind of what I'm looking at here. So I'm going to go Yair Rodriguez by decision to get it done over Josh Emmett. Okay, let's get to the main event. What a fight. Islam Makhachev, Alex Volkanovski. Islam Makhachev about a 4-1 favorite in this fight. Volkanovski plus 310. Who are you liking here? Who's going to take home the lightweight title?
I'm sure it's going to be a popular pick, but I'm on Makhachev. I mean, his submission prop, I don't like laying money line. Even in a parlay, I think it's kind of scary. Volkanovski, obviously, absolutely dominant at featherweight. He's stepping up. I mean, he'll become only the 5th guy to ever hold 2 belts. Well, I should say guy or woman to hold it, the 2 belts at one time. So he could become a double champ. He's stepping up though, which is hard. And we've seen most recently Israel Adesanya when he stepped up against Blachowicz. I know different weight class, but it was the size that ended up being, his downfall, because, Blachowicz just took him down. He was able to use that size. Makhachev, probably the same thing here in this fight. He's going to be able to use that size. Interestingly enough, reach is actually pretty close. Actually, a 1-inch advantage I see for Volkanovski. But, of course, height goes to Makhachev. Overall size will go to Makhachev. He's a pretty big lightweight as it is. So, I mean, if he gets this fight to the ground, it's going to be over. I took Charles Oliveira against Makhachev, and I regretted
both did,
that.
and a lot of people did, by the way, too. No, it's true though, because we didn't know how good Islam. To be honest, because he hadn't fought that top 5 opponent. I don't think that was a bad pick at the time. I know a lot of people want to sit here and say I told you so, but I mean, realistically, Oliveira had 3 really good wins prior to that in Chandler, Poirier, and Gaethje, right? So
I was stunned in that fight, because I really thought Oliveira was the best grappler at lightweight. And I mean, it could have been an off day for him. I'll be interested to see if they go at it again. But I mean, Makhachev, I got to hand it to him. Even even though I faded him in that fight, I watched and I was like, that was insane. I gave him props for that. So I don't think I can fade him here again, especially if he goes to the ground. I know he's the big favorite, so saying fade is a little bit weird, but he's plus 160 to win by submission. I think if he's going to win this fight, that's probably how it's going to happen. He just submitted who we all thought was the best grappler at lightweight, who was a lightweight. Now he's going to face a featherweight stepping up to lightweight. Granted, Volkanovski, I know he actually did have a fight at lightweight. So I don't know. I'm not going to fade Makhachev here, but it's a popular pick this weekend.
We're on the same page here. I think Islam wins. I always just look at it this way. Like, do you think Islam could make 145? I don't. Volkanovski can. Like, to me, that just shows that there's got to be some strength difference there, right? And I know Volkanovski used to be a rugby player, used to be like 200 pounds. I know all that stuff, but still, I just think that Makhachev has fought more consistently in the weight class. And I'm glad you brought up that Adesanya example, because I think that's true in a lot of cases. I think people sort of forget that when you're up a weight class, there is, a size and strength difference to a certain degree there. The big question is, how's this fight going to end? Part of me thinks it might go the distance just because Volk's never lost. Like, he's never lost in the UFC. He's never been finished. So that actually, let me double check that. I think I don't believe he was finished like even earlier in his career. He's got one loss. Was it a finish? It might have been actually. Let me just double check. Oh, it was. Okay, so it was a head kick knockout in 13 seconds in the third round back in 2013. Okay, but either way, like, I just think that part of me thinks this could go the distance with Makhachev just going takedown. My thing is, how's Volk going to win this fight? Like, I don't think, like, he could maybe outstrike him, but then that's also assuming that he's not going to get taken down, and I think he will get taken down. So that's kind of the issue there. You mentioned submission. Brian Ortega had him in a pretty tight submission hold, and he was able to get out. And I think Brian Ortega is one of the best ground specialists in all of MMA right now. So I kind of think that maybe Islam doesn't try to do that just because he might overexert himself. I'm actually thinking TKO maybe, and you're looking at the odds there, plus 400, plus 500, maybe like a type of situation where he just keeps taking Volk down. Volk's tired. He keeps, sort of landing shots, sort of like a TKO finish in the fight. I might take a stab at that, but honestly, this is a really tough fight to call. I do see Makhachev winning. Like I said, I don't know a path to victory for Volkanovski. For example, if Josh Emmett was moving up and fighting Islam, you could at least say maybe there's a puncher's chance there, but Volk's not really a power puncher, right? So that's where it's like I said, the only way I could see him winning is outstriking him, and I just think that he's going to get taken down too many times for that to happen. So, I would go, actually, some books do offer it if you can find it. You can maybe find a TKO prop and a decision prop, and you're not going to get, the odds will probably be higher, but at least that's safe, because I suppose he could submit him, but I just think that, like, because Volk showed that in the Ortega fight, that maybe he won't. So I'll go Islam TKO, third round. I think it'll go longer than the Charles fight, but I think Islam gets it done, and I think we're kind of on the same page here that I think this guy's going to hold the belt for a while. After that win over Charles, I'm a big-time believer in Islam Makhachev, so.
Well, what I was just going to add on, what's interesting about what you said about the knockout is I actually did see, he was on an interview with ESPN Deportes, and he said, honestly, I want to knock him out because everybody says that Islam is a grappler or wrestler, but I want to show people my striking. He's a short guy, and I really believe I can knock him out. Interesting quote. I don't know. I mean, sometimes that's just mind games. Like, maybe he's saying that, so then Volk will see it, and then he just takes him down in the first, 10 seconds. Like, might be mind games, but I mean, maybe he really wants to prove that. Who knows? But just an interesting quote. So inside the distance is minus 105. Not horrible juice there. Then you get covered on both sides. Submission.
That's true. Yeah, I guess inside the distance might be the way to go there as well. One more thing I'll mention, because you talked about the Charles Oliveira submission win, and I should mention Oliveira has been submitted a few times, but people forget it was actually Islam actually hit him and knocked Charles down. So his striking's come a long way. So that's why I think, again, the knockout prop could work, because look, he leveled Charles Oliveira, got him on the ground, submitted him. But I think Charles was just so out of gas at that point, he couldn't handle it. Volk's not going to have that problem. But again, I could see a sort of a knockdown maybe, and then go for a TKO finish here. But either way, we're on Islam. I think that's probably going to happen on Saturday. So, hopefully you guys enjoy the card on Saturday. Same regular time. Like sometimes when they have these cards, they tend to change the time, but this is going to be regular hours, 6 p.m. Eastern time. I think the main card starts at, the prelims, and then the main card will probably start at, use 10 o'clock Eastern time around there. Good luck, everyone. Really awesome card this Saturday. For myself, for Ben, we'll see you next week. And thanks so much for watching. Go cash those bets.